Welcome back, guys. I hope you are well rested and that you are ready to get back into things. Please make sure you have your class notes ready so that you can take down any important information as I convey it. Please also take notes in places where you are not 100% sure of the content so that you can ask me questions about it later. You will see that I attached a file called Important Terminology in the Google Classroom. Please download it, make yourself comfortable with the content. Otherwise, you might just think that I'm speaking a brand new weird language during the course of this presentation. Let's jump right into the market structures. If you think back to the very first beginning of your first economics class, circular flow. Yes, like I promised, we are always going to go back there. You will remember that we talked about the different markets. The definition for a market is that it is a place where buyers and sellers come together in order to exchange money for goods and services. In microeconomics, we look at 4 different market structures. The first one is the perfect competitor, and it is the only perfect market structure. This is followed by the monopolistic competitor, the oligopoly, and the monopoly. The last 3 are referred to as imperfect markets. In your exam guidelines, you will see that one of the first things they expect of you is to be able to describe the concept of perfect competition. To be able to do that, you need to know the characteristics we look at in order to classify these market structures. It does not matter whether you are looking at the perfect market or any of the other 3 imperfect market structures. The criteria remain the same. Let's look at these characteristics. We look at the number of firms in this market, the nature of the product being offered, the level of control the business has over the price, barriers to entry, collusion, the availability of information, the size of the profits that the business is likely to make, how they determine their output levels, and last but not least, what the demand curve looks like. Let's look at the characteristics of the perfect market. For this presentation, I will be using the example of peppers. Now, there are numerous buyers and sellers of green peppers, red peppers, yellow peppers. You are also not going to be picky when it comes to using peppers in your deliciously prepared meals. You won't care whether it was purchased from Spar, Pick n Pay, Food Lovers Market, or even the informal little stall there on the corner of the street, because a pepper is a pepper is a pepper. Now, in the perfect market, there are no barriers to entry. Anybody who wishes to enter the market by either producing the peppers themselves or just selling it can do so at free will. There is no collusion possible in the perfect market because of the numerous number of sellers or producers in this market. It is extremely important for you to remember that the perfect market cannot make an economic profit in the long run. They are only able to realize normal profits in the long run. And because there are so many producers in this market structure, the output is usually very high. So how do we distinguish between the individual business and the industry? Now, the individual business forms part of the market, where the industry represents all of the individual businesses making up the market. Now, the individual producer's demand curve is derived from the market, but we will go into a little bit more detail with regards to this later on. Now, you are going to be expected to construct a revenue table or complete the revenue table and then draw a graph based on this table. Since the perfect competitor is a price taker, it is forced to sell its product at this price. Think about the price of maize, gold, sunflower seeds, etc. There is a market price communicated, and producers have no other choice but to sell their product at the prevailing market price. Now, for this presentation, let's pretend that peppers are sold at 10 rands a kilogram. That means that whether the producer sells 1 kilogram, 5 kilograms, or 100 kilograms, they will charge consumers 10 rand per kilogram. And this is what this line over here represents. The price, regardless of the quantity that you sell, will be 10 rands. The next one is total revenue. We calculate total revenue by multiplying the quantity that we sold with the price that is being charged for this item. So if you sell 0 kilograms, your revenue will be 0. If you sell 1 kilogram, you multiply 1 with 10 to get your total revenue of 10 rand. If you sell 4 kilograms, you multiply 4 with the price of 10 rand to get a total revenue of 40 rand. If you sell 6 kilograms, 6 multiplied by 10 gives you 60. So you have plotted the total revenue over here. Selling nothing renders no revenue. Selling 1 kilogram, 10 rand. 2 kilogram, 20 rand. 3 kilogram, 30 rand. 4 kilogram, 40 rand, and so forth. Next, we calculate the average revenue. Average revenue is the price that the perfect competitor charges. Stays exactly the same. Let me prove that to you. We calculate average revenue by dividing total revenue with the quantity. So in this case, 10 divided by 1 is 10, or 30 divided by 3 is 10, or 50 divided by 5 is 10. On average, you receive 10 rand for every kilogram of the product that you sell. Like I said, I've just proven to you that the price that the perfect competitor charges is exactly equal to its average revenue. This amount remains constant throughout, regardless of your quantity. The definition of marginal revenue is the change in income that is earned with the sale of each additional unit. Now, once again, for your perfect competitor, your marginal revenue will always be equal to your average revenue, which will always be equal to your price. Because what does your total revenue change with for each additional unit sold? When you sold nothing, your revenue changed by 10 rand. And therefore, your marginal revenue from selling 0 units to the first unit is 10 rand. Now selling your second unit, your total revenue increased from 10 rand to 20 rand. So there was a 10 rand change in revenue. Selling your third item from 20 to 30 rand is a 10 rand difference. From 40 to 50 rand is a 10 rand difference. And from 50 to 60 is a 10 rand difference. How will you then use a graph to explain how the demand curve for the individual business is derived? Now, I mentioned earlier that the individual producer's demand curve is derived from the market. Let me demonstrate this to you. Please remember the following very important points when you draw your graphs. When you draw your axes, please remember to label them. Tell me, this is my price and this is my quantity axis. This is basic, it is simple, but believe me, you are going to lose a lot of unnecessary marks if you leave out this step. Next, the industry has a normal downward sloping demand curve following the law of demand. As prices increase, consumers will demand less of a product. As prices decrease, consumers will demand more of a product. And an upward sloping supply curve following the law of supply. As the price of a product increases, the supplier will be willing to increase the quantity that it produces. Now, where these two curves intersect is the market price and the market quantity. We derived the demand curve for the individual business by extending the line from the price of the industry all the way through to the axis of the individual business, like we did over here. We extend this market price all the way to the individual business. Now, you guys remember from the previous slides that the AR curve is equal to the MR curve, which is equal to the market price, which represents the demand curve, because this is the price that consumers agree to pay for this product if you look at the industry. Before we continue with the cost curves, I want to go back to a cost schedule just to give you a quick reference of how we draw the different cost curves. Total cost. For every business, there is certain fixed costs associated with starting this business. For example, if I want to plant my peppers, I need to buy fertilizer, I need to buy seeds in order to plant my peppers, and I haven't produced anything yet, but I have a fixed cost of 100 Rand. Now, as I start increasing my production, a kilogram, 2, 3, 4, 6, 500, a million kilograms of my product, my cost will increase. Okay, so the 20 Rand over here represents your variable cost, and it will increase as long as you increase the quantity that you are producing. Your average cost represents how much it costs you to produce a specific number of your product, of your green peppers here, for example. In order for you to increase production, you need to increase either the seeds that you want to plant, you are going to have to fertilize a larger area, you're going to have to weed your garden a lot more often, you're going to water it more often, or not more often, you're going to need more water in order to make sure your plants are well watered. This is not going to increase in the same increment necessarily because it depends on a lot of factors. But when it comes to your average cost is calculated by dividing your total cost with the quantity. Now, we can't do this one because you are not allowed to divide by 0. That is why we also do not have answers there. You cannot divide by 0. At first, your average cost will decrease. You will see producing the second kilogram and the third kilogram, my average cost decreases. This is because my fixed cost is now spread over more units as my output increases, so my cost increases, and my average cost will then again increase. I'm just going to repeat that in order to calculate average cost, you take your total cost and you divide it by a quantity. What is important for you to see here is that you start high, then your price decreases as your output increases up to the point of 50 Rand, and then we start increasing again. This is how we get the U shape of our ATC curve. Our MC curve on the other side. MC represents the extra cost incurred for producing each additional unit of output. We calculate MC by looking at the difference in total cost for each additional unit produced. So at unit number 1, the total cost increased by 20 Rand. When we produced nothing, cost was 100 Rand. Producing the first kilogram increased total cost by 20 Rand. Next, our total cost increased by 10 Rand. That is our marginal cost. Producing our third kilogram increased cost by 20 Rand. Now, because we are expanding our production quite a lot, we need to employ another person, or we need to consider getting irrigation for watering our plants. And this means that our total cost increased by 70 Rand. Then it increased by 70 Rand to the next unit. And then we jumped by 90 Rand, producing the 6th unit. So marginal cost is 90 Rand. To show you, we start with the 20, we decrease to 10, and then we go up again quite fast, 70, 90, and it increases quite sharply. This is how we derive the Nike shape of our MC curve. Now let's go and plot them on our graph. If you add your U-shaped AC curve and you add your Nike-shaped MC curve on your graph, it is extremely important to note how the MC curve intersects your AC curve at its lowest point. The most important point on your graph is this one over here, where your MC curve intersects with your MR curve. We call this the profit maximization point. Now, the business will determine their output at this level. Remember, every single business out there has one goal and one goal only, not to make a profit, but to maximize the profit that they are going to get. And this is this point. We are going to take this point and extend it down until we reach the AC curve. And then we are going to extend it all the way to the bottom, to the quantity, to indicate that this individual business will be willing to produce this quantity of this good or service. Just a quick indication, you will see that the cost at this quantity that the business is willing and able to produce is lying below the revenue that the business will make selling this product. And obviously, this indicates a profit. When the money you receive selling a product is more than the money you pay for producing this product, this is the area representing your economic profit. Now, the definition for an economic profit is just the fact that average revenue is more than average cost. Average revenue at the profit maximizing quantity is more than average cost. This gives you your economic profit per unit, if you look at the difference between P and P1, or if you take the area of this below AR until you reach AC, multiplied by quantity, it gives you your total profit. There are different ways for a business to determine how they're going to reach profit maximization. I'm going to start with the first method, looking at the total revenue curve in relation with the total cost curve. When we did our revenue schedule, you saw that the total revenue curve was upward sloping, like I drew here. If you add the total cost curve, you will see it follows an upward shape, downward shape, upward shape. And as I explained before, total cost will increase as you increase the units that you are producing until the firm reaches economies of scale. Now, this is represented over here. I put a little small picture there in the corner for you just to refresh your memory on how economies of scale work. Definition of economies of scale: as output increases, cost or price then will decrease. Now, this will continue up until a point where the business reaches diseconomies of scale, the point where prices start increasing again as output increases. Anywhere on your graph where your total revenue and your total cost graphs intersect, it means they are equal. And this is the definition for a normal profit. So these points represent our normal profit. When your total cost curve, the red one over here, anywhere where it is higher than your total revenue curve, your business is experiencing an economic loss. And anywhere where your total cost is below your total revenue, your business is experiencing an economic profit. Now, we are going to produce at an output where our profit is the most. So the furthest distance between your TC and TR curve is your profit maximizing output. The easiest way, though, is to just merely look where your MC curve intersects with your MR curve. This is indicated with this point. By extending the line down to your x-axis, you get the profit maximizing output, the quantity that the business is willing to produce. The whole reason for this is quite intricate, and hopefully we will have time later to revise this before the exams start, or maybe in one of our later presentations. You need to know profit maximizing output is the point where my MC curve intersects with my MR curve intersects with my MC curve. Lastly, for this lesson, you need to be able to derive your supply curve for your individual producer. Now, your supply curve shows the relationship between the quantity that you have supplied over there is your cost curve, your marginal cost curve. MC intersects AVC at its lowest point. as the price increases, that is the rule for supply, the more your supplier will be willing to produce. Now, we can't say that the MC curve is the supply curve of the individual producer because no producer is willing to produce anywhere where he cannot recover his variable costs at least. And this is why we call this our shutdown point. No firm will be willing to produce any quantity where he cannot recover his variable costs. So your business will only be willing to produce from this point upwards so that he can recover his variable costs. I hope you had fun with this lesson, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. I'll see you again later this week for lesson number 2. Keep well.